Chapter 6. The Disappearance of the McStay Family. As detailed in this book, disappearances are not that uncommon, and some, such as the vanishing of the Palmer brothers, are downright creepy. No matter how bizarre some missing person cases are, most tend to involve just one person. Whether the person involved got too intoxicated and wandered off, succumbed to the effects of Alzheimer's disease, or was the victim of a homicide, the vast majority of disappearances only involve one person. Logic and statistics dictate that the chance of more than one person disappearing at the same time from the same place is extremely low. For instance, if a group of people wander from their camp into the wilderness, the chances are pretty good that either one of the campers will be found by a search party or one of the group will make his way back to the camp. The same goes for an abduction homicide. It is extremely difficult to abduct and murder multiple people at the same time, even if there are multiple killers involved. These facts are what make the 2010 disappearance of the McStay family in Fallbrook, California both peculiar and frightening. By all accounts, the McStay family, which was comprised of 40-year-old father Joseph, 43-year-old mother Summer, 4-year-old boy Johnny, and his 3-year-old brother Joe Jr., were an average American family. They lived a relatively comfortable life in a quiet suburban neighborhood that was paid for with the profits from Joe's contracting business and Summer's work as a real estate agent. The McStays never mentioned to family or friends that they were taking a trip, and they were not known to have any enemies, which is what made their sudden disappearance frightening and the subject of nationwide media attention. The disappearance. Joe and Summer never indicated to their friends and family that anything was wrong in their household or that the family was planning on taking any extended trips. In fact, the family had just celebrated Joe Jr.'s 3rd birthday on January 31st, and by all accounts the family appeared happy and content, which made their sudden disappearance all the more mysterious. After repeated calls from Joe's brother Mike went unanswered, Mike entered the home through a window on February 15th to investigate. The family dogs were in the backyard unfed, and there were signs that the family left quickly because food was left out. Mike then called local police to report the strange circumstances and officially begin a missing persons investigation. The initial police investigation turned up a number of clues, but they only added more mystery to an increasingly enigmatic case. Although the left-out food and the unfed dogs indicated that the McStays left their home in a hurry, there were no signs of a struggle. With the help of Mike and other family members, the police were also able to ascertain that nothing valuable was missing, so a scenario of a home invasion, burglary was quickly ruled out. The Fallbrook Police and San Diego Sheriff's Department quickly canvassed the neighborhood and interviewed all of the McStays' family, friends, and neighbors, which then resulted in a couple of more important clues. A neighbor's security camera caught images of a car leaving the McStay residence at 7:47 p.m., but the car did not belong to either Joe or Summer. Unfortunately, although technology has come a long way, the resolution of the camera was not good enough to identify the images of anyone in the car or the car's license plate. For the time being, the mysterious nighttime visitor to the McStay home was a dead end, but it possibly fit part of a bigger picture that had yet to be painted. The police next interviewed Joe's friend and business partner, Chase Merritt, who said that he received a call from him at 8:28 p.m. Merritt let the call go to voicemail, as he claimed he often did, because if it was important or work-related, then Joe would leave a message. Joe did not leave a message. The next major break in the case came on February 8th, when the family's Isuzu Trooper was found in the San Isidro neighborhood of San Diego, which is just north of the international border of the United States and Mexico. The discovery of the McStay's family car was thought to be a big lead, but ultimately raised more questions than there were answered. Did the McStays simply go to Mexico for a vacation? If so, why did they not tell any of their family or friends? Why did they leave their beloved pets in such a sorry condition? And perhaps the most important question, why would they go to Mexico in the first place? Tijuana, which is the major Mexican city just south of the border, is a popular destination for many Americans, but it would not be a stretch to say that the city is not exactly family-friendly. Tijuana is more known for its brothels, strip clubs, and availability of drugs, both legal and illicit, than it is for any family attractions. Tijuana is clearly not a place where most people would bring two young children. And why would the family leave their car and walk into Mexico? There seems to be no reason why they would have done this. Some people argued that perhaps the entire family was trying to get lost and moved south of the border to do so, but it no doubt would have been easier to do so with the family car, at least for a while. They could have always sold the car at a later time. The location of the car on the border raised more questions than there were answers, and many of the McStay's family and friends began to believe that the car was staged at the border by other people, possibly for nefarious reasons. As family and friends began to doubt that the McStays were in Mexico, police uncovered another clue that once more turned the investigation upside down. A forensic search of the family's computer revealed that on January 28th, internet searches were made about travel in Mexico, specifically what type of documentation children would need to enter the country. Perhaps the McStays, for whatever reason, simply had enough of life in America and decided to leave on a whim to Mexico. After all, Summer and Joe were known to be free spirits, so maybe the situation was not so nefarious. Or maybe they had to leave town quickly for more ominous reasons. The McStay's family and friends remained unconvinced that Joe and Summer would have taken their children to another country without telling anyone, but without more evidence there was little that the police could do. The disappearance of the McStay family would remain one of the most highly reported missing persons cases in recent American history. Media attention and investigation. As the clues and circumstances of the disappearance of the McStay family emerged, the situation became one made for the media. Images of the attractive couple and their cute little boys were repeatedly flashed across television screens, newspaper articles, and web pages. The case quickly came to the attention of one-man crime crusader John Walsh, who hosted the popular weekly show America's Most Wanted. Walsh's show profiled notorious criminals who were on the run, as well as missing children, which Walsh often became emotional about since his own son was abducted and murdered by a serial killer in 1981. The McStay family disappearance seemed tailor-made for America's Most Wanted, so the case was profiled on a June 2010 episode. A number of viewers called into the tip line after the episode aired, but unfortunately they all turned out to be dead ends. The McStay case was also featured on the similarly themed show, Unsolved Mysteries, hosted by late actor Dennis Farina, but again, the tips that were generated led nowhere. As the months that the McStay family was missing turned into years, the police, John Walsh, and Dennis Farina were not the only people investigating their disappearance. Former radio talk show host and author Rick Baker also threw his hat into the ring. Baker began investigating the case independently from the police shortly after the family went missing. He interviewed friends, family, and potential witnesses and came to some interesting conclusions in his book, No Goodbyes: The Mysterious Disappearance of the McStay Family. Baker's interest in the case began when he interviewed McStay on his San Diego radio show in 2011. After the radio interview with McStay, Baker compiled a list of potential sightings of the family and followed up on them, which took the radio host throughout Latin America. 4 days after the McStays vanished, a video of a family of 4 Mexican border on foot surfaced, but it could not be determined who they were. After that report, more and more tips of sightings in countries such as the Dominican Republic, Belize, and Haiti kept a glimmer of hope alive for the friends and family of the McStays. Baker packed his suitcases and went to a number of the exotic locales to follow up on the leads. "I've traveled around the world to what I thought were verified sightings," said Baker, "but ultimately none of them panned out." The supposed Latin American connection led many to believe that violent drug cartels may have been responsible for the family's abduction, even though there were no signs that either of the parents owed drug debts. There was also no evidence that apart from some occasional marijuana use, either of the McStay parents ever took harder drugs such as cocaine, methamphetamines, or heroin. Joe and Summer McStay just did not fit the profile of drug cartel victims. The location of the McStays' Isuzu also did not seem like the work of a drug cartel to Baker. "Why did they stage the car? A cartel is not interested in staging anything," said Baker. Baker's observation is correct in regards to cartel activities south of the border, but it is commonly known that the cartels keep more of a low profile in the United States and refrain from some of their more blatant acts of extreme violence. With that said, it does seem like a lot of effort for gang members to go through to somehow cover up the abduction of a middle-class American family. As Baker's independent investigation continued, the police began to focus on a suspect who was right under their noses. A suspect emerges. Charles Chase Merritt, now 59 years old, was a friend and occasional business associate of Joe. The two men worked on a number of projects in the area installing fountains, which was Joe's specialty, and were generally known to get along well. Decorative water fountains that are often seen in the yards and driveways of expensive homes are what Joe specialized in and how he was able to provide for his family. Business slowed during 2008 and 2009, as it did for the entire construction industry nationwide, but at the time of the McStay family disappearance, business was picking back up. Joe was finally able to start saving some money again for his family, and he was also able to hire more employees and give some work to his friends such as Charles Merritt. Although Merritt and McStay did not spend too much time together outside of work, after all, Joe had a family to look after. By all accounts they got along fairly well and considered each other colleagues and friends. Also, a large part of Merritt's income was derived from work McStay sent his way, so at first glance it seemed unlikely that he would have anything to do with Joe and his family's disappearance. But Merritt was the last known person to see Joe. Merritt told police that he met Joe at a Chick-fil-A restaurant in the afternoon to discuss some potential future contracts and receive payment for some completed jobs. He claimed that McStay seemed fine and that the two left and went their separate ways after the brief meeting. As the last person to see Joe McStay, a certain amount of suspicion was cast Merritt's way, but that alone is not enough to arrest someone for a crime, which is if a crime in fact took place. But it turns out that Merritt also had a bit of a shady past. Merritt was a convicted felon who had a rap sheet that included burglary and possession of stolen property. His last conviction came in 2001. Although Merritt had a criminal record, all of his convictions were for nonviolent offenses, and no one that knew him indicated that he was capable of abducting 4 people. He was not known as a violent person and had no known altercations with Joe. The case into the disappearance of the McStay family continued to go off into several directions, and as time went by, media interest began to wane. Many in the McStay family began to question if they would ever know what happened to their loved ones. Then on November 13, 2013, the case took an unfortunate turn. The discovery. San Bernardino County in Southern California is the largest county in landmass in the United States. Although the county is also quite populated, with over 2 million inhabitants, most of those people live in towns such as San Bernardino, which are just outside of Los Angeles County in the far western end of the county. Once you get east of San Bernardino, the county is a vast sea of desert and mountains that stretches all the way to the state lines of Nevada and Arizona. It is exactly the type of place where a person can easily go missing, alive or dead. On November 13th, a motorcyclist discovered the remains of the entire McStay family in 2 shallow graves outside of the town of Victorville. The search for the McStays was finally over, but the case then evolved into a homicide investigation. Although the bodies had apparently been in the ground since the time of their disappearance, the dry desert climate preserved the bodies of the adults quite well. An autopsy determined that the parents, and more than likely the children as well, were killed by blunt force trauma to the head, although the bodies of the children were too degraded to tell for sure. A sledgehammer recovered from one of the graves was probably the murder weapon. Charles Merritt was arrested the next day for the family's murder, and in pretrial hearings it was revealed that the police had amassed a mountain of evidence on him during their investigation. Much of the evidence against Merritt is circumstantial, but it is voluminous and appears quite damning. The investigation into Merritt's background discovered that the contractor with a modest income liked to spend several days at a time in the area casinos. And Merritt was not winning. To pay for his gambling losses, Merritt wrote over $21,000 in checks on Joe McStay's business account and then canceled McStay's QuickBooks accounting membership on February 8, 2010, the day the McStay's Isuzu was discovered near the international border. The circumstantial evidence against Merritt further piled up when it was discovered that he withdrew thousands more from Joe's business account during the period from February 9, 2010, well into March, to pay for extended trips to area casinos. Merritt's DNA was also recovered from the family's Isuzu, which can certainly be argued away as he was an associate of Joe's, but when taken with the other evidence, looks to be the final straw in the camel's back of circumstantial evidence. Merritt now sits in the San Bernardino County Jail and faces the death penalty if he is convicted. Perhaps in an effort to stall the inevitable, Merritt has fired 5 different attorneys, which has caused considerable delay to the trial. Although the surviving members of the McStay family are glad that an arrest has been made, the loss of their loved ones will always weigh heavy on their hearts. Although it looks like all arrows point towards Charles Merritt as the killer, some doubt if he is the sole perpetrator. One argument is that it would be too difficult for one person to kill 4 people, even if 2 of them were children. The reality is that Joe trusted his business associate and he therefore never saw him coming, so to speak. Once the McStay parents knew what was happening, they probably complied in order to save their children, and by the time they got to the desert outside Victorville, it was too late. In a case as strange as the McStay family disappearance, conspiracy theories are bound to take hold, and even if Merritt is convicted and put to death, some will continue to doubt that all the facts have come to light. The true tragedy of the McStay murder case is that they were murdered by someone they trusted who killed them for the oldest motive known to man, greed.